Yes, I'm here. I'm just gonna turn off the camera for a little bit until like it's my turn to talk, essentially.
Oh, come on. It's on?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah,
certainly can. We can
Yes.
hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, yeah. Okay, good. So I was just
Oh,
saying that
come
I will
on.
keep off my camera until I
Right.
need to like speak.
Right. That's
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of The Trending Mind. This is Trending Mind number 16, and we have what will be a very interesting program this evening. When we get back, we'll introduce our guests to you. Please stay tuned. This is The Trending Mind. Maybe life is a journey, much like a car or van moving from point A to B. Maybe life is a race that offers rewards to both the swift and those who endure it to the end. Maybe life is a complex mathematical question that we just need to solve. Or maybe life is just a cosmic trend. Something that happens every few years, like 100,000 years or so. And then poof, just like that, it's gone. Do join us as we try to figure this whole thing out. This is The Trending Mind, Friday evenings at 7 on Facebook Live. Yes, we're here. This is The Trending Mind, and welcome aboard. I am Andy Gordon. With me is a regular member of The Trending Mind panel, Compton, and we have two special guests who are going to introduce themselves. Riza, let's start with you, please.
see,
Okay,
maybe
Riza,
mute. Maybe mute.
I think the internet on her end is
Yes.
gone again.
Right.
Dr. Dorn, could you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you for having me. Yes, I'm Sean Dorn, Dr. Dorn. I'm a school psychologist in the Department of Education here. I'm also a graduate school professor in the School of Counseling to teach master's level students. I supervise graduate students getting their school psychology degree, and I work with do a lot of consulting work with individuals with disabilities and families. And born and raised in Guyana, now I live in Long Island, New York, and happy to be here to talk about and contribute in any way, shape, or form that I can.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Folks, it seems like Riza is joining us from Guyana. She's a psychologist. She's attached to St. Joseph's Mercy Hospital. Oh, Riza, she's back. So, Riza, you'll tell us about yourself.
Yes, I've come closer to the router. Oh, the problems in Guyana. So good evening, everyone. I am Riza Khan. I am a Master's of Science Counseling Psychologist. I have my own practice here in Guyana called Anira Counseling and Psychological Services. Yes, I'm also attached to St. Joseph's Mercy Hospital, also known as Mercy. I also work with Equal Guyana and the Rainbow Foundation here in Guyana. So I do private practice and I see clients basically on a daily basis here as a therapist.
Okay, great. Now, normally on The Trend in Mind, what we do, we start off by exploring a little proverb, something that's, somebody may have said way back. And we kind of look at our own lives now and to see, okay, does this thing really apply? Or does it make sense? Or what sense can we make of it? All right. So we're looking at the proverb, Can you hear me, Riza?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. We're looking at the proverb. It's a Gaelic proverb, and it says, "Be sure to taste your words before you spit them out." All right? Be sure to taste your words before you spit them out. Now, of course, basically it's saying think before you speak. But we want to take it literally this evening, right? And my question is, would human beings have been, do you think human beings would have been less inclined to utter and spew harsh and bitter words? Were they able to taste those words as it, or would they have just simply grown accustomed to the bitterness? Riza, you first.
Thank you, ladies first tonight. Lovely. I think, you know, Guyanese have a saying, those who know it feel it. It kind of takes me back to that in the sense of if you knew that you were going to say something that was offensive or insensitive or unkind, that perhaps you would think twice about if you could experience, or like you say, taste. You might second guess whether you should deliver that to someone else if you knew what it felt like. And I think the same thing in a reverse with my clients when they're being negative to themselves. I say, you know, why is it that you can be so kind to other people but negative to yourself? You should taste those same positive things that you say to people for yourself as well. You know, before you go telling people, but then telling yourself such negative things. So I think that definitely if people could feel it and experience and know it, they might think twice about it. But what we do understand is that sometimes people have experienced these negative things given to them, and it almost is just a replication of what they've experienced.
Okay, great. Dr. Doran, your take.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Miss Riza. I mean, I'm calling Miss Can. I'm not too good at pronouncing names. I'm gonna stick with Miss Can. But it also comes from if you do have that option of more choices on your taste bud, right? Because if your initial taste was something that that might appear to others as being repulsive or hard to swallow or what. Remember, I was growing up and I had to taste medicine. They used to put some sugar after it. You know, it's a spoonful of sugar make the medicine go down, right? But if that's because we had the option of having something sweet that we've grown to like, because when something different is added, there's a sense of comparison. But if you've been socialized from wherever long to think that this is the way, right, to express yourself or to experience things, then as you're just going to replicate those things because you have no other option, right? You have very little comparison too. So and then we also have to remember that as we move through different developmental stages, right, we're exposed to other tastes, right? So now we have the luxury of experience to reflect and be like, right, we shouldn't have done that, man. I shouldn't have said that. When we were growing up, we thought that when we experienced going to the Chinese restaurants and seeing kung fu movies and all that, so there's different things that you would respond. You'd be like, oh, you think you're being cool, but now look at what's happening. It makes people look back and be like, wait a minute, that wasn't the right thing to do. Right? So it all depends on the taste bud comparison, actually. Right? That's my response for now.
Compton, your take.
Well, it's sort of a continuation of the discussion where experiences are learned in terms of your parents, your grandparents, and expectation. So the society or the bubble that we live in as young people conditions us to think of a particular way And until or unless we experience different scenarios, only then we'll be able to do the self-reflection. And even in itself, sometimes self-reflection in himself is persons are not capable of, or would prefer not to do it, not to self-reflect. And that's where the difficulty is in terms of tasting. We won't even know it's different because we don't even there's no self-reflection. So for me, it's more of a growth and involving empathy and understanding of what the other person is going through. So that's my take in terms of the proverb that you're throwing out.
Okay, thank you so much, Compton. Off the bat, my question for our two panelists. If I have a cold, I will know. I might cough, stuff might be happening in my nostrils. If I have the flu, I would know. I'll feel, my throat area, my neck, I'm warm, and so I gotta go and take 2 Tylenol or whatever. Question to the two of you, and Dr. Dorn, you can begin. How do I know if I'm mentally ill?
Well, that's a you kind of putting on weight. You should go to the gym, or because of the physical manifestation, as you're saying, it's easier for individuals to recognize that. But one of the things that I tell my students, it comes to a sense of awareness, right? Awareness is a very, very key word, and Mr. Compton just indicated that. To know that you have a quote unquote mental illness is oftentimes it has to be contextual, right? It has to be put within a context where now you become aware, wait a minute, this way of functioning, I'm no longer getting, right, these things that I might have used to get when I acted this way. All right. Something is, or I constantly beginning to start to feel this lack of I guess some type of reward, whatever it is that you might feel, because there's got some people like to take advantage, some people like to do certain things, and they don't really have this level of empathy or this level of awareness that something is maladaptive, but that because they've been getting that reward that they've been seeking, right? Whatever it is. When individuals begin to start now to become aware and say, wait a minute, I can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. Boy, something right here, something happening. I don't feel like myself. I'm beginning to start to have this I feel off balance. So then you begin to start to take a look and see if there's something wrong, right? To move to the space of illness, you want to, because it's what they said, an ounce of prevention is better than tons of cure. You want to make sure you begin to look to see, okay, what is different, right? What experiences I'm having that I'm not again getting that satisfaction, that gratification, that reward, whatever it is, good, bad, or indifferent, right? Now you're beginning to start to see, okay, something is off. I don't feel like myself. This has been going on too long. Something feels different. Then that's when that reflection needs to kick in, right? As Mr. Compton said, because now you start to realize, wait a minute, I have some comparison based on how I'm doing, my history. Now something is feeling different. I need to start to explore what that is, right? And then begin to start to look to I always say, just pick the closest people around you, people that you can feel like you could be as transparent with, then have that conversation with them, right? And see how they respond to you. And then be willing to say, you notice it too. Maybe it is me. This introspection maybe it is me. Then you start to explore it, because by the time it becomes an illness per se, right, there's going to be a lot of damage, right? That's already been done. So the idea is to begin to start to recognize those steps before you get to the point, and then you bring it to the clinicians like us, and then we're going to then help you, work with you to determine at that juncture if it is an illness per se, or if it's just some type of maladaptive way of functioning that can be corrected through certain actions, right?
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Dorn. Terence, just to clue you in, I was just asking the psychologist on our panel. I was saying if I have a fever or a cold, I can readily recognize the symptoms, by, feeling myself, the cough and etc. So my question was, how would I know if I'm mentally ill? So Dr. Dorn was just answering, and Riza, you could pick it up now, please.
Right. Thanks, guys. So Dr. Dorn really kind of broke it down, which is great because a lot of persons often tend to ask, like, how do I know when I should go to a therapist? And we want clients to come in that introspection period. We don't want them to wait till it's a full-blown illness. And in therapy, what we tend to do, like before, because people are like, well, how do I know I have an illness? And I explain to them the DSM, which is our holy grail, and we have to look through the book, and there's tests and all these things. But one of the points that sticks out in the DSM-5 is that it must clinically significantly impact your function, either socially, occupationally, academically, that kind of thing. And so what we try to get persons to recognize is that just because you're experiencing stress doesn't necessarily mean it's a full-blown mental health illness. I think what we need to get persons on board with is that you can seek a therapist from the jump. You can seek a therapist when you've been living with it for 10 years. Don't feel like because you've been living it for forever, oh, it can't be fixed or resolved at that point in time. It needs support for whatever it is you're going through. And I think that persons tend to not know. They tend to be like, okay, mental health is stigma and we have concerns with confidentiality and so forth. But the reality is, whether it's new or old, if something feels wrong, and I will have a client say, I just don't feel the same way. I'm not studying the same way. I'm not talking to people the same way. I don't feel loved the same way. I'm having racing thoughts like these. I'm not sleeping. And even though you mentioned like with physical health, there are physical manifestations. For mental health, there's physical manifestations too. My clients, I tend to always ask them about their eating habits, their sleeping habits, how they handle stress, the way they cope, those kinds of things. And if you see a decline, I've had clients say, oh, well, I was eating fine up to 2 weeks ago. Oh, well, I was sleeping fine up to 2 weeks ago. Oh, I could handle stress. And then this thing, I'm like, okay, we need to talk about what happened 2 weeks ago. Because it seems like you were managing up until that point. And so I feel like it's important to get people on board with normalizing that mental illness, you don't have to wait till it becomes a full-blown illness. Like people can come for stress, you can come for parental guidance, you can come for anxiety or anxious thinking or racing thoughts. It doesn't have to be. I feel like people tend to both want to put a title and be scared of the title at the same time. Like people are very confident saying, oh, God, I got anxiety or I'm depressed, very casually. But then when you sit with them and you're like, no, I actually think you might be, and we've taken this test and you kind of are, then that's when they have a problem with it. You're like, oh my God, really? I just was making a joke this whole time. And I'm like, you can't, but it's really unkind to joke about mental health because the reality is, yeah, you are experiencing something that's not what you traditionally would be able to manage maybe. And I think a lot of times what people don't recognize is mental health is a lot about management. Any one of us in this chat right now could have mental health issues. And the difference between like myself and say Compton or Andy or Terence or Dr. Dorn is management and support and that kind of thing, which we'll talk more about as the session goes along.
Okay, thank you so much, Riza. Dr. Blackman, based on the little you heard from Dr. Dorn and Riza, what would you want to ask them at this stage?
So I would maybe start off by saying, you know, within the sort of Guyanese context, you know, how do they see the sort of, you know, the spread? I mean, you know, there's 750,000 people. You know, what percentage, what number do you think would be, you know, that suffer from some kind of mental health challenge, and, you know, care, and about the quality of care, and, you know, ways in which we can, you know, improve the quality of care. I mean, that would be a kind of macro level starting place. And then perhaps ways in which, you know, I mean, I know just on our own, you know, we know sort of growing up, the kind of stigma that has always been attached to, you know, I heard Ms. Khan say a moment about, you know, I'd like, you know, she said, she said from the jump, if you can you can seek a therapist from the jump. But I think, you know, we know in our Guyana that, you know, maybe we're not going to do that. And are there, you know, ways in which, you know, we can make that threshold sufficiently low so that people can act. But so first, just a kind of broad structure, like, you know, how is it in the population, you know, rural, urban, you know, men, women, poor, not so poor, you know, what are the contours of the mental health conversation in the Guyanese context?
Right. So I'm guessing, Terrence, you're talking about me, because I think, Dr. Doran, you're in the States. Yeah, you practice in the States.
Yeah, Dr. Dawn practices in
Yeah,
so
I was
Dr.
directing
Dawn
it
may more have to talk about the Caribbean American community.
Yeah, I was directing it more to the Guyanese.
Right. Okay. Just making
Yes.
sure. So what I have seen, so I've been practicing Guyana now a few years. I was practicing I had my internship in Barbados. So I've seen kind of how at least those two countries interpret mental health. And I know that in Trinidad, I had colleagues who said, oh, well, the market is saturated. Their words, and multiple Trinidadians have told me, saturated with mental health specialists. And I'm like, wow, I would love for us to get to a point where we're saturated. I feel saturated right now. You know, me personally, I have like a waiting list, you know, for crying out loud. But like, in terms of, let's look at percentile. Now, I cannot say, like, don't quote me on this stat, but let's look at the statistics. Like, we don't have enough data on like the percentage of Guyanese. However, what we do know is World Health Organization says that for every, I think, 100,000, there's supposed to be 70 psychologists or something like that. Or, you know, of course, those are outrageous numbers, but okay, let's say for every 700,000, there is 10 psychologists. I can only name you 7 psychologists right now.
Yeah. 7,
right? So
the single digit 7.
Right. Yeah. So you're talking about really 100,000 persons per one like psychologist, really. Now, this does not include psychiatrists or, you know, clinically trained social workers. We don't have too many of those, but the reality is we just don't have the right ratio right now to be seeing everyone. So just based off of that benchmark, we're not meeting the benchmark, first of all. Second of all, given that Guyana has, for example, a lot of crime, there is a likelihood that more than half of Guyanese, anywhere between the age of, like, let's say, I don't even want to give an age range. I think more than half of Guyanese have experienced some mental health disorder or just challenge through their lifetime, because you're looking at just persons who may suffer from just like simple acute stress disorders, from like being robbed, or like straight PTSD from a trauma, or childhood emotional neglect, depression, low self-esteem. Like those, in my mind, those all contribute to mental health. And so I think that there's a large portion of Guyanese who are walking around, for example, untreated with disorders such as like PTSD, depression, schizophrenia, and so on. sociopathology as well. So there we have issues. Now, when you ask about whether it's like rural or urban,
Urban,
in terms of most of the psychologists I mentioned are in region 4. Some of us get out to other regions to try and do some work. We do workshops, we do training. We try to do there used to be a program in 2010, I believe, called the Gatekeepers. And so what the Ministry of Health at that time had went out and tried to train community members to just have at least awareness, peer counseling, and so on, so that because we don't have even a clinical social worker in every clinic, any region 5, 6, 7, and so on out of Georgetown, we try to get the community on the same level of understanding. Hey, like if your child is doing this or your neighbor's doing this or this social issue is happening in your community, these are the responses or these are the expected effects.
Can I ask you a follow up?
Sure.
In terms of schools, what's the the prevalence of this kind of infrastructure in the schools, like in the high schools, for example?
My understanding is that the Ministry of Education has trained over the past decade, trained like guidance counselors, but guidance counselors, I don't believe, have certain skills to get into deeper rooted issues. It may be just something as simple as peer counseling, guidance counseling, literally like vocational counseling, which of course is still important because these youth still need support to figure out, their identities and their goals and wishes and moving forward. But there really is not enough, because I've heard there's guidance counselors and they'll be doing like 3 to 6 schools. And so you have like one person going once a week to a school, and there's only 5 days a week for school, and you have 5 other schools to attend to as well that same week. So I think that for me, when you ask about that macro level, because I did social work as well, that macro level involvement, we have to look at training back the gatekeepers. We need to train more persons for guidance counselors, clinical social workers. In Belize in the 80s, there was one psychiatrist, Dr. Cayetano, who was very well known between the UN and the World Health Organization. She was the only psychiatrist in Belize for like 2 decades. What she had to end up doing was training for 2 odd decades clinical and psychiatric nurses and social workers, so that the whole Belize didn't depend on her, right? So she made programs and projects and kept training, and now Belize has benefited from, like, for a country that has half of our population, they have more clinical social workers and psychiatric nurses than us. And that's because she took it upon herself to do that, right? And so we need to make it across the board to continually keep training and advancing the people who are working in the helping field in Guyana. I had spoken to PAHO in 2015 before I went off to do my master's. And I said to them, I went to like a focus group thing, and they're like, what do you think the Ministry of Health and PAHO should work on? And I was like, so the master's I'm going to do, it costs X dollars. Here's a part of your funding that can go towards a budget, like a budget line of funds, so that every year you can select like one Guyanese every year, just one Guyanese every single year to go off to do this training. It's a 2-year master's. You have to do internship. You have to do counseling before you even go into the field. It's properly done. And so, and you will see an increase in the normalcy of how we look at mental health, but also effectively getting across the people. In 2 years, I've probably seen one-on-one, probably over 200 odd people, 300 odd people, right? So that's just one of me. So imagine if we got a counselor a new psychologist every 2 years, we could start sending them out to region 2 and 3 and 6 and 10.
Actually,
Instead
can
of
I
them
ask
all
one more
chunking up in
question?
four.
I want to ask a question of Dr. Dorn. Since you were here, listening to Ms. Raiza Khan, I started thinking about the Caribbean community here in the U.S. And I'm wondering, to what extent are we the same, and to what extent are we different in terms of our approaches to mental health?
As in comparison to Caribbean and the US,
Yeah,
or
between like your experience of Guyana and
Mhm,
I just assumed that you were Guyanese. I don't know.
mhm.
Uh, so if you had an experience of Guyana and an experience of the United States, and whether or not, as you listen, whether or not we're the same or we're different, or how are we same and different?
Well, let me first take this time. It's a very, this is one of the third times I'm doing a presentation, and there is someone either on the panel or in the audience that I have a certain level of respect for that they don't even know. So check this out. In 2017, right? I got my PhD and I came back to Guyana, and I happened to go to the University of Guyana, and I was there with Dr. Ivelaw Law. And then there was somebody on this panel who was the keynote speaker at the very first research.
Yes,
thing.
yes.
You remember Dr. Frackman? He
You remember
yes, I met you there actually. I was the one with the Dr. Dr. Ivan Long, and I
so
watched
it's a pleasure.
you. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. So you are Guyanese.
Yeah. I watched you there, yeah. And I was like, yo, Medgar Evers, and we were to communicate
That's
after
very
that. So
good.
it was a pleasure. You did an outstanding job, and
Thank you.
yeah, and my frat brother Warren User would be happy to know that. That's
Good.
my fraternity. That's a very dear friend of mine. My
Very
fraternity
good.
brother. Absolutely, very familiar.
Very
And a
good. So
couple
the
others that are
connections are
there.
there. Huh?
Yes. But it's a pleasure to be with you again, sir. To answer your question, it's about we unfortunately this lack of resources per se, it's similar that we have here in the United States, because you have one counselor to school. I'm one psychologist. I'm working in two different schools. And when I presented at the Caribbean Psychological Association in Kingston, Jamaica, they were talking about that too. So this is a pattern across. But one of the challenge, this is about me right now, right? It's not, you have to say the views and the stuff expressed is about Dr. Door, not about Trending Mind. So I need to preface this, right? I actually reached out to members of the Guyanese mental health, the Department of Health, Ministry of Health. And I was like, you know what? I'm coming home. Got this degree and I want to do some work. I want to do some trade. All you guys have to do is prepare me with the space, and I'm going to make sure I take care of everything. And I was told, we don't have uses for your services at this time. Even though I've done a presentation there with Dr. Harry from Georgetown, Guyana, right, in the Georgetown Hospital. So this rejection of a free service to help train individuals, I'm like, you don't have uses for my PhD level work. Are you kidding me? When I already did some stuff there, whatever the case is like. So I am not, because I guess at that juncture, the stakeholders, if stakeholders do not see things as a need, right, that individuals can benefit from, right? Because you remember stakeholders, they share policies, they share practices. And if they do not see this as a need per se, then of course, you're not going to get the buy-in. So, and of course, there have to be some type of, there's this commercial they have in the U.S. that says, like Visiting Nurses Association, your mom have this. Now what? Right? I'm the now what type of person. We're discussing all this. We know there's a need for the mental health support. We know announcer prevention is better than cure. We know all of these things. But if you don't have a buy-in per se, right, you're going to have these barriers. So when you're speaking, Ms. Gann, I can connect to that on so many levels, right? I teach graduate school guidance counselor students, and I tell them about that unfortunately, the skills that you're developing, you might be using a smaller percentage of that, because if the stakeholder, the policy, the gatekeeper, these individuals do not see the benefit of your work, right? The value of your service, then it's going to be obstacles. So now and then we as clinicians, we also have to know that when you open that wound, right, you have to know how to skillfully close it. So you just can't somebody walk into your office
Exactly.
and say, yo, I'm depressed, and thing. You say, oh shucks, you're depressed. All right, you know what? Okay, let me talk for a little bit and then go home and then pray and then think everything is well. Now what? Or if you before, and coming back to Mr. Gordon's question initially about recognizing the mental illness, sometimes in the conversation is when that awareness tend to happen. That's when the diagnostic thing that Miss Can mentioned actually come out. So now here it is. This person might be telling you they have blah 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 blah, and then you say, you know what? Based on the information you told me, and when I look up with the DSM, you meet the criteria for depression or for this, and the person now gets this information and becomes so anxiety provoking. You know, the idea, now I know. Not everybody can manage the now I know. So now here it is, you put this thing in this person's head, this person for diagnosis, and you put them back out there. Now what? Now what? So the
Yeah.
issue has to come back to, yes, irrespective of where we are people who have been people who will continue to be people until they're no longer people. And along this peoplehood, they're going to do things based on their experiences. Because if I was doing this and I was getting away with it, and now you're going to tell me that it's a mental illness and I've been getting away with it like a child, a spoiled child. You know, you spoiled, but you disgust you by the way, but I've been getting away with this.
Yeah.
So now I'm in a different context. Now you're going to tell me it's a mental health issue. It's a problem, and I've been getting away with this. Okay, so now that you've defined it and diagnosed it, now what you going to help me do with this?
Right.
If there's no resources for that continuum of care, then what's the sense I'm coming to see you in the first place? No, you make me more crazy. You make me more mad because there's no follow-up.
Because you've
You're
just
not.
given me like a lot of information, but no moving forward. And I feel like it's easy for anybody to just go online and be like, test for depression, Dex depression index, inventory, whatever. Like it's easy to get that information, but I always tell clients, like I have had people message me, "Hi, Miss Khan, I want to come in for therapy." Da, da, da. No, I am clinically depressed. Those are always the words they tell me. Clinically depressed, and I'm like, okay, where were you
They
diagnosed? You know, who
consulted
diagnosed
Dr.
you?
Google. They consulted Dr. Google.
Dr. Google, yeah, because they're trying to, and so I want to make sure they're not taking meds. Like I want to understand right before I even say like, yeah, come in, because there's things that also don't fall into my competency either. So I want to make sure I check that at the door. And they'll be like, oh no, that's self-diagnosed. And I'm like, okay, we will work through whether this is what it is. Because in my mind, people can tell me, and I tell my clients this all the time, just because you have something, a diagnosis that says like this is what you're experiencing, that's not the end all be all. I tell my clients, it is not a ball and chain for life. It is not a crown you have to carry forever. I tell people all the time, you come to therapy, we challenge it, we work through it, and then you know what? We check you back in like 6 to 12 months. You probably may have come down a level in the scale of your depression, and that's because it was treated. And people have asked me, can it be cured, can it be fixed? I said, if we're talking about cured and fixed, is that you never experience anger or stress or sadness again, then no, because you're human. You're gonna experience those basic emotions. Will you want to kill yourself again? If we worked hard enough, hopefully not, but life happens. You can deal with the clients, all the triggers you think that they have at that point in time, but, and I tell my clients this all the time, we can't plan for every trigger. We can do a trigger list, we can do an anxiety list, we can do an anger list. We can't assume that in 10 years you're not going to be experiencing something else, another trauma, and you're not going to be triggered by something new. right? So it's also about giving them tools so they can manage it when they've left us.
Yeah, and
Okay,
if I may
thank
add
you.
to that, I'm sorry, if I may add to
Yeah,
that,
you can go ahead.
yeah, just to be, yes, and again, and in the kind of pre-huddle that I did with Mr. Gordon earlier, I said, you know what, the one thing that, and I'm glad Miss Can is going through all the clinical, the checklists and all that stuff, because I like to look at a lot more the functionality, right? Yes, you can have challenges, but your ability to function in society is what makes it more important, right? And one of the things that a lot of individuals struggle with, it's the thoughts and feelings about things. And the one thing we have to get people to understand is that, listen, man, your thoughts and feelings are not necessarily good or bad. They are yours. Is what you do with them, right? There are times when I should speak a little low because my sons are upstairs, but there are times when I'm like, oh my goodness, Sean, they got my name, Sean and Travis. Sean, Travis, stop. Sean, don't do this. Sean. Then I'm like, man, if you just fell and just bump your head a little bit, but don't bleed too much. You can learn, right? I think that way. But then it's me. I used to do the same thing, right? I think that way, right? But I really want it to happen. But then I get so, oh my God, I'm such a bad father. I'm thinking, no, something we have our thoughts and feelings. And what people need to understand, you are going to have triggers, right? If you move from that attempt of suicide by then having support from this guy, and then the next time you have a similar trigger, he's like, are you able to just do less of the step that led to the attempt? Then that's progress. Right. But the idea of thinking about it, I thought about killing myself. And I just like, and he's like, but then, are you crazy? What do you think about? Are you crazy? What do you think about killing yourself? But then I actually thought about, this suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If I were to leave, blah, blah, blah. Then once you begin to start to get people into that understanding that your thoughts and your feelings are there, but what you do after with it, right, becomes more important, then there's a lot of things you can stop getting for the mental way, whether before it becomes an illness per se, right? When I talk about that prevention, you want to understand people are people, right? You have been you. I have been me longer than having a PhD, and I'm still me plus a PhD. Since I get a PhD, I don't stop being me, right? The little moderation thing that I use, I know how to use it more in moderation. But I'm still me, right? And then guess what? Let's just say we have a part 2 of this next week. Guess what? I have a week of growth. I might be able to respond to you might ask me the same question. I might, I was able to reflect on this on a week, but I don't know what next week is going to be or whatever the case. Like, this is where I'm currently at. So the idea is to meet people where they are, understand the context. They are understand that certain habits, for example, when you move from a particular part of the world or what have you, like in Ghana, everybody, hey, good night, you give a hug and thing. Now you know, when you hugging, you so touchy feel, you so this, you so that. Then now you start to internalize, wait, do I have a problem? Because my culture used to say it's okay to do these things. Now I'm in a different society. Now, do I have a mental health problem? Context. Right? So those are some of the things that can trigger, right? These self-talk, these issues that people have with themselves because the society says, those practices might be okay over there, but within this context is different. How you deal with those changes becomes important. All right.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll take a short break. This is Trend in Mind, number 16, and we're talking mental health.
For a country with such high income per capita, the services for people with disabilities are quite limited. What we have in Trinidad and Tobago is a large number of people that in other countries may be on disability, but here are entering into the workforce. So you may have someone who is hearing voices or cannot grasp reality, and they're working in a factory setting with very hot items or very sharp tools. Or you may have a victim of domestic violence who is ashamed and hiding what she's experiencing. So she's experiencing depression and anxiety, and that's impacting her capacity to work with her coworkers, to solve problems, to concentrate, and she's making lots and lots of mistakes. Or she may have very high absenteeism. She doesn't come to work a lot. She's always making excuses. And though her workplace may see her as negligent or absent, she really is someone with unaddressed depression and anxiety, or someone who feels generally unsafe and doesn't know how to access those things.
Now that's a clip from Trinidad and Tobago. Compton, on viewing that and on listening to, what Rice has been saying about Guyana, what Dr. Dorn has been saying about his experience, what's your response?
I pick up in terms of what Dr. Dorn was talking about in terms of the policymakers, and that's one of the things that the focus. Let's look at an example. For example, filaria, and we had a national response where one or two or how many tablets you had to take in the entire population to deal with filaria. So why can't we have the same push for mental health? That is my concern in terms of the emphasis, and also maybe more so the recognition that there's a problem. Because if you don't recognize it, it means you will not even be able to try. There will be no solution. It will all be bubbling up there without no recognition. So those are the two things: the focus and recognition that we do have a problem, and what do we do about it at a societal level. I mean, Dr. Dorn and Risa was very good in terms of the individual. My concern is society as a whole, in terms of dealing with the mental health issues that we have, either at a community level, at a regional level, and countrywide.
Okay, Riza, did you hear all of Compton?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I caught most of what Compton. I think what he was doing was comparing the Filaria campaign and the energy and the push that was put behind it, and comparing it and questioning, why can't mental health have a similar energy and encouragement and program?
Yes.
Right? Is that accurate?
Yeah. Right. So do you want to address, how do we go about really motivating and moving and sensitizing the population?
It's very, very challenging.
I think it has to be multifaceted. So I think, to answer Compton's question first, I think just as a simple, I try not to be black and white, but a simple reason why the Pilera, for example, campaign could work versus like a mental health initiative of that nature is that, going back to that, resources. Even you can send volunteers out to administer the filaria. There's not enough of us to go out and just knock on every door and say, hey, we're mental health psychologists, this is what we do. You should come out to our campaign, or you should come out to our walk, or you should come out to our office. I just don't think it's physically impossible to do that. But I do hear, and I have also felt similarly about other campaigns, because I remember in 2015, before I did my master's, there was everything about Zika, and Zika prevention. And we didn't even have like that many cases of Zika in comparison to like suicides we had that year. And I remember this is before I started doing my lives on my YouTube channel and stuff. I said, what? I get it. I get the importance of Zika, but like, we are not talking about mental health the same way we're talking about Zika. So I definitely hear, I feel like what Compton is comparing, because I get it. I've had those same thoughts about other conditions. I think that however it was executed with the filaria was just take these tablets, send it all out. You don't need specialized persons to execute this campaign. And that way everyone is cleared from getting filaria. Now, you still should do certain measures to make sure that you don't contract it before you get the medication, but it's not that simple when it comes to mental health. We can't just go out and say, hey, take this pill and you'll never be stressed again, or hey, take this pill and you'll never have suicide ideation again, right? We can't just dose up the whole again. I wish it was that simple, but it's not. And so it has
It's
to be
not the
multifaceted.
Matrix, right? It's not the Matrix. Take one of these.
Blue or red, right? No, it's not. Good point, and I feel like it needs to be multifaceted. And then there's issues with culture and normalizing. And I like to believe that what I'm doing now, I genuinely believe that is in the efforts of normalizing therapy and mental health. When I have my 16 sessions every week, and then those 16 start doubling, and I have a waiting list, and I've been having a waiting list since last year, December, and I got 14 new online clients during the first month of COVID. That told me that my YouTubes and word of mouth was getting around that people should seek support. And I feel like the more we normalize it and people are more talking about it, like I had a former client who very openly talked about therapy, and at the end of it, they had battled, a serious mental health illness, and they've been able to manage it. They from like 0 to 100, and they went out everywhere telling people about me and therapy and normalizing it. And they went from struggling to like thriving. They even did their own talk where they got to be on the panel with me, and they said that this was like the proudest moment of their life, where they went from needing therapy to being on the same panel with their therapist, And I think that the more we talk about how normal it is, that is a really good starting point. And Guyanese love for talk, we love for gaff, word of mouth is everything. I can definitely say that I know that former client sent at least 30 people to me in the last like 2 years. Personally, I know it. Because they'll come and say, Andy Gordon sent me. And I'll be like, okay. Thank you. So I think a lot of it has to do with getting it normalized. And that really starts in the communities. It starts in the schools. Like, I think like why don't we have subjects for mental health? I've been to a school where we did like peace studies. And I didn't understand why other schools weren't doing conflict mediation, peace studies, anger management. Like, those should be credited. You should have to get like a percentage of your grade every year for those kind of electives, right? So I feel like it needs to be across the board. Mental health, even in workplaces, HR needs to be trained, personnel needs to be trained. I have seen personnel, people have no clue what to do with someone when they're having a panic attack in public service.
That's a very interesting area you actually went there to, Terence and Compton. You'll agree with me, because we some weeks back we were talking about subjects that that we should include in the curricula at the secondary school level. So it's very interesting that you actually went there. Dr. Blackman, what's your take?
No. I think I actually I made a note when she said that. I said, that was not something that we, as I could recall our discussion,
right,
thought that it was important. But I think, this is the benefit of having a larger, more inclusive conversation. When you do,
Right.
you recognize that there are many things that you miss, and so I think this is one of those areas. We did have some discussion in this regard, but certainly I think that's a very obvious. I mean, given some of the mental health challenges
Yeah.
that
And just
pervade,
violence,
yes, I think
you
that's
know, in our
definitely
schools. Like, why are we not doing proper conflict mediation,
something.
conflict
Yes,
resolution, anger management,
and
bullying? Like, there's so many
yeah,
subjects that we could easily, like, all we need is one teacher who's trained in a lot of these subjects, like maybe someone who's a psychologist who did their at least degree in psychology at minimum, maybe is also an educator, and teaches these things on a curriculum, and you have to attend. It's,
and brings
you
everyone
know,
in. Yeah,
and
no,
and and you get it to be interesting, so they want to attend, not mandate them.
yeah. No, it's absolutely what you've just articulated is absolutely a very important thing. I mean, I think we, both you and Dr. Dorn have sort of made clear in a sense uh, how important it is for our mind to be right, and how problematic it is when our mind is not right.
Yeah.
And I noted someone raised the question of culture. I mean, we come from a culture where this business of even remotely having a thought that your mind might not be right is a problem. So we say, you just say, the boy run off, something wrong with you. Yeah, the busing going, the busing getting all the way to the school, so on. And we
You know, keep coming or you go in.
if we got a whole, if you listen to our language, you see we have a whole series of idioms for this kind of thing. And so we learn very early
Yeah.
to, to hide, to take, to minimize the ways in which people might perceive us as being odd,
Right.
or even to question, whether or not this might be something we should be thinking about. So, it's a very, very, I actually did make a note. It's interesting that you said it. It's a very astute observation to say that, we
Why don't we
perhaps
have it?
need to have some kind of thing like that in our basic curriculum, so
Yeah.
that we're at least exploring the roots of these negative social behaviors. Yeah.
And
And
what that will do, Terence, is that it would allow as a society for us to normalize rather than to hide
yep.
these symptoms and
These aspects.
signs,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
we'll become conscious as we started on at the very beginning in terms of words and the effects of words.
Yep.
So if we were to make it at the secondary school level, and to make our younger people aware that these are the problems, these are the signs. So for me, is trying to put in place practices that would allow us to move to a better place rather than to hide and ridicule.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Well, we
interesting
want
you
to go.
mentioned that. I'm sorry if I may jump in. It's interesting because I've had had this conversation, and I actually put together a curriculum for that.
Yep.
And and it,
See Terrence, and you can just go to Dr. Dorn. He has the curriculum
Yeah,
already.
and it's, you know, it's
you
very
see how
interesting
easy it
because
could work, right? Yeah.
Dr. Blackman's being, because in his speech, and I remember it when he talked about, and having the follow through and the investment, and there was so much rich studies. I was so impressed by that first conference. It was so impressed. And then he talked about, listen, there's a need for us to continue to follow through and kind of build from the ground up, having instilling a sense of hope. And then one of the things, think of Dr. Blackman as a mathematician. I literally had a conversation with a friend of mine, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, where she's stressing out because I'm not a math person. I'm not a this, I'm not a that. And these phobias, because math is like one that truly pass or fail, either pass or you fail, right? So, and then most of it, right, this thought, this fear of that, right, then it manifests in other ways. So think of Dr. Blackman being that, not being a quote unquote psychologist, but being a phobia addresser in the area of math by saying to someone, listen, maybe there are many different approaches to math, right? Let me assist you because a lot of it is this fear, is this, and those things then gets built upon, built upon anxiety. And because you have to address it from the ground up. And the idea of normalizing certain things is just, listen, you're not going to be great at anything. The idea, like I always say with me personally, when I transition to the pearly gate, I'm just trying to make sure I get a passing grade. If I get a C to end up in the pearly, I'm good. So if I get a couple of F's here and there, I'm gonna be like, all right, let me get a couple of A over there because I just want my GPA to pass. I'm not trying to be perfect in this life because I understand I'm still a person. I understand I still got limitations, right? Another way to normalize things is to say to people, mental health, you mean, man? Sometimes say, listen, we're trying to make you either irie or not irie, right? We're not asking for you to have perfect mental health. There's no such thing. Just be more irie than not irie, right? And let's bring this balance. Let's get you a C. Be in the irie, C can pass, right? One of my favorite people, my cousin, is like, yo, well, I love my liquor, but come Lent, he gives it because he has a certain discipline, right? He's able to irie function do the day because he's able to do what needs to be done. Then when he has certain time, we would sit and have conversations, and then it's all right, here's my suggestion, blah, 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 cause right? It doesn't necessarily have to move to the clinical realm, right? Because that in itself is stigmatizing to the point where it can either trigger people to come out, motivate people to come out, or force them to further retreat.
Yeah.
Right? You either irie or you're not irie. I'm feeling a little off today, and then some days it's okay. Yeah, I'm not a morning person. My mom used to be like, "Yo, you gotta get up, and boy, don't let the sun get you in bed, get breakfast, and then you can go back to sleep." Mom, why? I'm not irie in the mornings. This is me. I irie in the night. I don't have a problem. My cousin said the early bird catches the worm, but guess what? There's some bird worm that's going to be lazy like me. He's going to come out in the night. I ain't going to find a late worm, right? Because I'm not functional in the morning. That doesn't necessarily mean that, you know what I'm saying? So people have to understand people are people who have been people who will continue to be people that they're no longer people. Doing this peoplehood, you're going to develop different things. And you will respond to things based on your experience. The idea is to meet them where they are, put it within context, let them realize, all right, you're in a C-ish range, B plus, all right, maybe like a C minus. Let's get you to B minus in this life so you can continue to do what you need to do.
I love the take on your terms, Dr. Dorn.
Oh yeah, the irony and irony. I wish I had math. I still math.
All right.
Yeah.
We're gonna close off with the question that I wanted to ask from the very beginning, but it has been such a fruitful and eye-opening discussion. I didn't need to pause it, and I guess we're gonna have to continue this discussion next week. But the question we posed out there, Riza and Dr. Dorn, is: Do men and women respond differently? In your experience, do men and women respond differently to stress, to crises? What's your take? Starting with Riza.
Ladies first, sir. Age before.
Froze.
Okay?
Oh, she's gone. All right. Hello.
Dr. Dorn,
I think Riza's gone. Dr. Dorn, you could take that until Riza comes back.
Well, the one thing that I'm mindful of, it's the whole the gender traditional, because it's when most of these supposedly diagnoses and classifications are put in place, right? Men tend to do it, and we tend to kind of determine what's normal or abnormal. So I like to stay away from that aspect of it, because you run into that area of, oh, you can't get a woman to run things. How women is emotional and men is more and then you end up and then you miss, right, what the information is telling you. I've never been a woman. I've never been. I don't even know how my brother could deal with stress different than me, because I'm not my brother. I can just tell you that I do believe, however, that it's about getting to the space where you can get individuals to tap into what's happening with them, right? Having them communicate, because I think my dad physically, if he can, if we have to lift weights and all that stuff, I think my dad can outdo my mom 10 times. But if you really want to know how strong my mom is, it's like the whole concept of a tea bag in hot water, right? My mom could juggle so many different things when they were alive. So now what's the context of how you respond to stress? When my dad's like, all right, I'm just bringing this money, you handle all those things, right?
Exactly.
So who's functioning better, right?
Exactly.
Who is responding to it differently, right? The idea is context. What does it mean? And how are we socialized into thinking, and Miss Can give this point, and that's one of my favorite lines, that every man thinks his burden is heavy as, but he who feels it knows it. Not because you might see one person responding to a situation in one particular way and another one is doing it, you automatically assume
He's
one is
better off.
quote unquote doing better than this. So I know I'm not specifically getting into your answer, Mr. Gordon, and it's on purpose. This whole current climate has changed the game, right? That dude who's supposed to go out there and be the breadwinner and doing this thing, and now he's not really working, and now and then he's imploding, right? And he might turn to different subs or become aggressive or what have you. Then and then the woman that pick up and vice versa, right? Who handles the situation different? I think this kind of conversation requires some type of research to get a sense of, let women and men tell their story as pertain to how they deal with everyday situations and challenges, right? And then we get a sense as pertain to the functionality of it and how we can then assist each person depending on how they categorize themselves or identify, how you work with them to get them to that B plus. If they want to be an A, if they want, that's on them. I'm gonna stick with a B plus, right? Get them to that passing grade and functionality in society, right? And I purposely answered like that because I kind of don't want to get into that aspect of it. Respectfully.
That's all right. You come like a politician then. That's cool. That's good psychology. How would you deal with that question, Riza?
I think I am, I guess, less diplomatic to some degree, unlike Dr. Dorr. I think that, yes, research would suggest that, yes, men and women do respond differently to crisis and stress. However, there's multiple factors as to why that happens. There's actually biological reasons why women handle and respond to stress differently from, say, men. And it has to do with things like cortisol and oxytocin and so on. I won't get into all the nitty-gritties, but you can definitely, Google it, do your own little research. But there are actually biological reasons why we do respond to things differently, and it has to do with hormones. Social factors come into play. Even when they say, like, okay, the statistical numbers for if men are in therapy versus women in therapy, I will tell you, if it's 50-50, it's just barely off. It's like 45-55 kind of thing. It's not a huge, like 80% are women coming to therapy and 20 because we assume women are the ones talking. I have lots of guys and a lot of guys approaching for therapy in the last 2 years. And so we kind of have to like break that social context or complex that men are not going to express their stress. And that's why we assume that, oh, well, we know women are stressors, or can be stressed, and they are stressors. But they can be stressed because why? Women will come on and be like, oh, God,
That's
baby,
funny.
don't talk to me today. I ain't able to take the children somewhere. I'm stressing, right? Like, we are going to be more expected to be more verbal. But that doesn't mean men are not thinking it. It does not mean that men are not saying it, whether directly or indirectly. And I think as a therapist, what I'm looking for is not what my clients are saying to me, but what they are also not directly saying to me. Because I'm going to call them out. I'm a kind of I have a feeling Dr. Dorm is also like this, where he will call you out, kind of like kind of what do you call Fitz, the theorist Fitz, used to call you out if you sat weird. He would call you out if you were tapping your foot. He would call you out. So I feel like, it is our duty sometimes to kind of bring back our clients, kind of give them, yes, I hear that's what you're saying, but I'm also curious about what I'm also hearing, what you're not saying, right? So there are times when we do have to look at what ways in which people are conveying stress. Just because a man is not talking about it directly doesn't mean he's not demonstrating, or he or she is not demonstrating that they're stressed. And then depending on how they're demonstrating, whether it falls in that social context of appropriate, then people will respond. And what I also heard Dr. Dorn speak about is meeting people where they're at. We definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that. And he said something earlier when we're talking about suicide. He gave this example where he said, man, how are you thinking about suicide? For what? For what? Life fine. If you respond that way, you're not going to get that honest response, because you have not created a space for an open, honest, non-judgmental, non-critical space. So if it is that we want people to express that they're stressed and to help them manage their stress better, we also have to meet them in an open space and be like, yo, like, what's going on, man? You've been really snappy lately, or like you're not eating, or like you, like, say it's your partner, be like, yo, you tumble up whole night, you did not sleep, right? And having those conversations and calling them out, not in a confronting way, but in as we would say, confronting in a caring manner in therapy, and kind of saying back to them, I'm concerned. And I feel like that's the big ticket in therapy for me, whereby if I can convey to my clients, I care, I'm concerned, and I want to help, and I want to give them a space where they can let me know how I can help, I'm going to give it to them. And I find we get results. We get work if you give people that space to have calm, relaxing, non-judgmental conversations about whether it's stress, societal issues, how men feel, how women feel, etc.
Okay, great. I hope our viewers and listeners out there have gotten some insight. Of course, this is the kind of conversation that could go on and on.
No.
Right, Compton and Terence, you could give us your closing remarks, and then we close out. Compton, starting with you.
Of course. I've been listening to Teresa and Dr. Dorn, and for me, always I try to look at the society as a whole, and particularly what was just said by Teresa, where if we can lift our people to recognize that as a group that we have to be tolerant of persons who will be different, as Dr. Dorn was talking all about. So recognizing that we are different, but we're human, and we have to be able to reach that person or persons at their level. So for me, in terms of this mental health discussion this evening, we as a society has got to stigmatize less and empathize more.
Okay, great. Dr. Blackman, your closing remarks.
Yeah, so this has been a really, really excellent discussion, and I'm glad I was able to make it. There are a couple of things I want to just highlight. I think there's a big place here for us to. Someone raised the question on the Facebook around the cultural dimensions of the mental health. Just in terms of a country like Guyana with a diverse sort of ethnic population, diverse sort of cultural things. How do we make this sort of something that has a sort of proper Guyanese flavor to it? And I think that's a really big question and something for us to address in some subsequent place. I really want to reemphasize this question about about the subjects in the schools around mental health. I think it's a very, very important thing. And I wanted to sort of say that when we had this discussion, Renita did talk about psychology and some of the issues there. And so, it's something that this conversation is forcing us to really think again about and to revisit perhaps in some more detail. I like Dr. Dorn's assessment of mental health. I want you to be a little more irie rather than less irie. This is a good way to have the feel about it. And I don't think he was, I think Raisa kind of imagined that he was copping out when he kind of didn't address frontally the question of men and women. But I actually think that response is a really nice response, right? Let women and men tell their stories, their individual stories, and then think about how we respond to them on an individual basis. Yes, there are going to be some broad measures in terms of, women will tend to approach a thing this way, or men will tend to approach a thing this way. But for the individual health, I think that maybe it's a good idea to really keep that perspective in mind, so that, rather than, when I walk into Dr. Dorn's office, he simply sees a black man. He says, sit down and tell me what's going on in your head, and then uses what I communicate as a way for him to make a decision about how to make me more or less irie, and how to guide me to the more irie path rather than to the less irie part. So I actually thought, not complete. I think actually thought that was a very good response to the, and I would. I think I would commend that to us in this context. Having said that, I do think it's not, we're not, it's not rocket science to observe that, women and men are different. We have 4 men on this program and 1 woman, and anyone who's looking at the program will immediately identify that these 4 people are men and this is a woman, right? So there are, to Raisa's point, there are evident differences between men and women that are biological in nature, and so one would expect that these things will contribute in some way to the ways in which we manage stress. But I actually thought that Raisa too sort of looked for a kind of, she looked for a way out too, right? Because then she said, well, we have to really think about, so not because a man is not saying too much, that he's not really under pressure, right? And we all know that as men. Sometimes we're under pressure. When we're under pressure, we're just trying to stay calm. And anyone says, how you doing? I'm doing good. Instead, you're just holding it together and you're keeping it calm. So I think she's right. In a way, sometimes when men are under pressure, we might not necessarily, and that's, maybe that's more a Guyanese thing, right? We become, we see this. We know all, or uncles or fathers, so on. People under tremendous pain, and they just, so the guy's walking around, going and helping all these people, and then, like tomorrow sort of died from something. And so that guy was sick for the last 6 years, and every day he was operating like it was just completely normal. So that's something that we all need to learn how to better manage. And I think again, Andy, I think this is a really, really important conversation, not only for us as Guyanese in Guyana, but for us as Guyanese in the United States, and more broadly Caribbean populations in the United States. And I see that even moving into the realm of like African American populations, which share some similar kinds of things, where we don't engage in our mental health, in wellness in the same way. So we spill out. We drink too much. We use too many. We use too many illicit drugs. We eat too many bad foods. We find ways to cope with things when we should be thinking about how to cope with them in
effectively.
And so I just wanted to thank our colleagues for an education tonight, and to thank you and Compton for educating me.
All right, thank you. All right, Dr. Dorn, you and Riza, if we just tell our viewers, about your current practice, what you're doing currently in your field, and then we will close out. I'll take you, Dr. Dorn.
Yeah, so primarily I work in the school system, as I said, and so there's oftentimes you run into certain conflicts where if you do private work outside of this in the school system with the same population, you run into so I prefer to currently. I mostly work outside of the school system. I mostly work with people with developmental disabilities, like consulting with those different ages, because that's a population. Special education is my thing. I have a passion for that population, especially parents. Right, I wrote my dissertation in it and all that stuff. So, I like to look at the functionality of individuals as opposed to the diagnostic category. Right, kind of like when Dr. Blackman said, like a black man walking into the office, a guy. I'm not gonna try to over-identify with that individual, because although we might be both Guyanese or what have you, I'm not a mathematician, and he's very rare in that world. So there's some unique challenges that come with that. So I need to listen to his story, right? How does he, right? What is the functionality of what's going on with you? And that's what I try to even when I'm classifying students and what have you, I'm less like to focus on the label. The label then is for the policy and context, but I look more for the functionality of things. This is a person who happens to be blah blah blah, not a blah 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 person, right? So when I work with these agencies or whatever, I come back to that to remind individuals, especially when those individuals are living in homes, and I say, you realize that you as a worker, you are constantly in this person's space. Do you like somebody else being in space? Sometimes I don't even want people around me. Like, when I saw kids upstairs, I need my space. Now you're constantly in this individual space. You expect them to function the way which you tell them to do. So I look for that human element and encourage people not to forget that part of it. And then so all of that gets carried over even into when I'm teaching in the graduate program. I always remind my students to remember, you are counselors in training, and this is a journey. You are dealing with individuals. Right? You are dealing with individuals. You don't know what those antecedents, so you don't know what's happening. Right? Take the time to recognize those challenges and to intervene accordingly. So that's kind of what my whole practice is. My whole thing. I'm eventually going to move. In time, I'm trying to set up my own thing, but I need to carve that out. But for now, it's just a school system teaching and work with individuals with developmental disabilities and doing this. Okay.
Okay, great. Riza, give us a brief on, your practice currently.
Right. So bless Dr. Doran's heart, because special ed and special needs is a special person. I am not blessed with those capacities or skills and that's not my competency. So I do not work with children with special needs and so on. As far as special needs go with children, I work with like ADHD kind of thing, behavioral changes, parenting, etc. But indeed, I do also agree with Dr. Dorm in terms of I am stronger. I think that it's important for counselors. And the thing is, I'm counseling psychology. I didn't do clinical psychology because I didn't want to just be looking at that person through a lens of a clinician lens. I feel like what I'm hearing Dr. Dorm sound like he has a humanistic theory point of view, as do I. And so we do take the time. And I have a supervisor as well, and from Trinidad. And I said to her, look, I'm going to be honest. I may not diagnose someone for at least 3 sessions. Is that bad? I don't know, but that's just what feels comfortable for me, because I really want to get to know like what is really happening. So, but in terms of my practice, like I mentioned, I'm out of Anira Counseling Psychological Services located in Georgetown. I work with adults primarily. I do work with minors, especially because of COVID. I've been getting an increase in minors because what are the Guyanese parents concerned about? Their grades, their performance. And I'm just like, grades and performance is the least of your problem right now. You need to know what I know. And I know a lot. I think I know a lot more than you. And you need to talk with your children. So minors a lot recently. I do work with children, but like I said, mostly it's things like anger management, ADHD, school-related things, maybe trauma. I definitely do work with trauma. When I was in Barbados, I worked with a domestic violence shelter, gender-based violence shelter, trafficking of women. So I do a lot of work with like women and trauma and DV and parenting and a lot of self-development and identity building and childhood emotional neglect and yeah, a lot of that stuff. We do get clinical things, but I don't even think we have a clinical psychologist in Guyana, really. So a lot of my colleagues who are counseling psychologists or general MA or MSc psychologists, we take on the clinical within reason. I'd like to believe ethically with him. I know my boundaries, so yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Riza and Dr. Dorn. It has been a great evening. It's been a highly informative evening. And I know both in terms of our panel and our viewers, they have a lot of stuff to take away from this. We hope to have you guys back on sometime. And it has been indeed a very great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
And
night.
thank you. And let me say this quickly to you about the growth thing, right? Another reason with the whole not how men handle things. Because look at this. We hear this yourself on, again, 4 men on this talking about mental health from a Guyanese background in 2021. Would that have been the case back then? So you see this evolution? This is what's important. So thank you for doing this. It's important for us to have these conversations and move from those traditional roles and adapt to the changing world. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay,
Thank you.
good night,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good night.
Good night, Dr.
Good night.
Blackburn.
Good
Good night,
night.
Dr.
Good
Dorn.
night.
Good night, Doctor.
Maybe life is a journey, much like a car or van moving from point A to B. Maybe life is a race that offers rewards to both the swift and those who endure it to the end. Maybe life is a complex mathematical question that we just need to solve. Or maybe life is just a cosmic trend, something that happens every few years, like 100,000 years or so.
and then poof, just like that, it's gone. Do join us as we try to figure this whole thing out. This is The Trending Mind, Friday evenings at 7.